So Doctor Who is returning soon to television sometime this month. I forget the exact date, for its 8th season since it restarted in 2005. And it's going to be a pretty different season from everything I've heard. For one thing, they're starting off with a new Doctor since Matt Smith left the show at the end of the previous season. So it's going to have a lot of expectations placed on it right away. And I thought when I put out my last catching up video, which was catching up with Marvel, I thought, well, what is another thing I could catch up on, because I want to make this into a series. And I thought, you know what, Doctor Who is a good one. So I'm going to catch you all up on Doctor Who. Now, Doctor Who was a show that was created in 1963 for the BBC. It is a British show, and it's pretty much one of the longest running shows to date, because it started at 63. It just celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. And so, yeah, let's get started. So, a little backstory on Doctor Who. There's a few things, like, if you don't already watch the show, you should know, is that the Doctor is an alien from the planet Gallifrey. He's called a Time Lord, and he travels in time and space in his TARDIS, which is a time and relative dimension and space thingy. It's a police box that's bigger on the inside, and the Doctor uses this this is a time machine the Doctor uses to travel in time and space and interact with things and fix things and all sorts of things, which actually apparently in the original 60s series he got in trouble for doing, because he's not supposed to be doing. He stole the TARDIS, actually, and was an outcast from the Time Lords, eventually reconciled with them at some point. I don't know, I've never actually seen the original series, don't judge me. I'm sure a lot of you haven't seen the original series either. The Doctor usually travels with one or two companions that just travel with him, help him out, and are usually getting in trouble, and he has to rescue them. Another thing he does is a thing called regeneration. When his body is close to death, he can regenerate into a new body and pretty much start a new life. The Doctor can do this 12 times for a total of 13 Doctors, which they've technically already broken this rule. So far we've actually gotten up to 13 Doctors. So we have Dr. George Washington, Dr. Mo Howard, Dr. Thomas Jefferson, Dr. Crazy Eyes, Dr. Beige, Dr. Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Coat, Dr. Radagast, Dr. Movie Doctor, Dr. Oxley, Dr. Malekith, Dr. Awesome, Dr. Not Quite So Awesome, and finally Dr. Intensifies. But enough of the backstory, so now we're starting with Season 1 of the reboot, which was, I think, technically like Season 27 if you actually count all the previous seasons. But we're just calling it Series 1, because technically it should be series because it's British. So before the events of Series 1, there was the Time War, and the Doctor is the sole survivor of this war that killed both all the Time Lords and all the Daleks, who are awesome. The Daleks are like the Doctor's #1 enemy out of all the enemies, and they're pretty awesome, I'm not gonna lie. After the Time War, the Doctor comes to Earth and he meets this girl named Rose Tyler, who becomes his new companion, and they travel through time and space, back in time, forward in time, different planets, all this cool stuff. But everywhere they go, they keep hearing this phrase, Bad Wolf, and they don't know what it means until finally, at the end of the series, they encounter the Daleks once again, who have been revealed to have survived the Time War. But then Rose comes in, she destroys all the Daleks because she looked into the heart of the TARDIS and absorbed all the energy that it things. But because she's a human, she can't handle all the power that the TARDIS gave her, so she's slowly dying. The Doctor absorbs the energy out of Rose into himself and releases it back into the TARDIS, but not before it causes him to slowly start to die as well. So Rose is now safe, but the Doctor is slowly dying, which causes him to regenerate into the next Doctor, who's played by David Tennant, and that's where Season 1 leads into Season 2. During Season 2, David Tennant takes on the role of the Doctor, and he is amazing. He's my favorite Doctor. I really like Eccleston as well, but David Tennant's my #1. So the Doctor and Rose continue in their journeys, and this time around, instead of Bad Wolf, we are treated to Torchwood, which is the recurring theme of Series 2. Every series has a recurring theme, and this one is Torchwood, and so on and so forth. Series 2 ends with Rose and the Doctor having to part ways when they're pulled into alternate universes, and the pathways to said universes are closed. Series 3 starts off with the Doctor meeting someone named Donna Noble, who will come into play later in the next season, but for this whole season his companion is Martha Jones. And Martha travels with the Doctor, and they go on all these adventures, and it ends with the Doctor's long thought dead nemesis, the Master, coming back and slowly taking over England until Martha manages to save the world when the Doctor is captured, and so on and so forth, and blah blah blah. The Master dies. The end. Martha decides to leave the Doctor in favor of staying with her family, something Rose wouldn't do. So this time the Doctor is out on his own. He comes across Donna Noble again, and she becomes his companion now. And there's a lot of things about Donna that just confuse the Doctor. He keeps coming across her, and the Ood, these weird squid-like aliens, keep telling her there's something keep telling him there's something important about her, and he doesn't really understand why that is until the end of the season when Rose finally comes back through alternate dimensions, even though she was told specifically in season 2 that jumping through dimensions causes the fabric of reality to slowly deteriorate, and they're all complaining about how the world is ending in season 4, but no one really addresses that it's probably Rose's fault. Anyway, I digress. The Daleks are back, and the Daleks are better than ever. One of the Daleks shoots the Doctor, which causes him to sort of regenerate, but he doesn't fully regenerate. He siphons off the rest of it into a hand that had been cut off during season 2. I forgot to mention that. And then that hand that had all the regeneration power then grew a clone of David Tennant's Doctor, and things happened. And Donna somehow got Donna got fused with this version of the Doctor somehow, and I'm starting to realize that I should have planned this video out a little better. In the end, Donna's life is at stake, and the Doctor has to erase all of her memories of him to save her life, and he has to leave companionless once again. Instead of going directly into another season, we were treated to several specials that bridge the gap in between Series 4 and Series 5. In the specials, the Doctor comes across Donna's grandfather once again. They find out that the Master is actually not dead or has been resurrected or whatever. I kind of forget the details. Blah 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 blah. The Doctor hears this thing with when he knocks 4 times, then the Doctor will meet his doom. So the Master hears the knocking in his head, and he thinks this is a signal that the Doctor's life is at an end. In the end, the Doctor comes out victorious, but still hears the knocking once the Master is dead, and causing him to think that he's going to die after he's not going to regenerate. But because of the whole knocking thing, the Doctor doesn't think he's going to regenerate. And so he says his last farewells to everybody, goes off into space, starts to regenerate, the TARDIS starts to explode, but lo and behold, the Doctor does actually regenerate again into Matt Smith. And this is where the show kind of took a different turn, and I'm not going to say for the better. I know a lot of people like Matt Smith and the characters involved in his portrayal of the Doctor, but for me personally, I don't particularly like it. I'm not bashing Smith as an actor. I think he's okay, but I just don't think the stories are as good anymore, but I'll get to that now. So the newly regenerated 11th Doctor, played by Matt Smith, crashes to Earth into the backyard of Amelia Pond, who is this little Scottish girl living in England. She has a crack in her wall that really scares her, even though she's not afraid of anything else, seemingly. He promises to come back for her in 5 minutes, but accidentally comes back in 12 years, when Amelia is all grown up, and she goes now by the name of Amy Pond. Amy starts traveling with the Doctor like he originally promised, and it sometimes brings along her boyfriend/fiancé, Rory, who dies, but comes back in a really confusing way. And we're fully introduced to River Song as a character. She was briefly in Season 4, but we didn't really know much about her. So Season 5 is when we start learning a little more about her, and we learn even more in Series 6, but I'll get to that later. In the end, the Doctor realizes there's something more about Amy, that the universe seems to be revolving around her or something like that. I don't really remember. But there's this thing called the Pandorica. The Doctor is put in it because it's like the perfect prison, and eventually he somehow gets out, and Amy was in the Pandorica, and Rory waited like thousands of years because he wasn't actually dead, and he was a Roman, and then he was a security guard at a museum where the Pandorica was held, and young Amy rescues adult Amy from the Pandorica. You try making sense of what I'm trying to tell you, because that ending doesn't actually make sense. So then there was Series 6, which I just finished earlier today. Series 6 was a lot darker than all the other series. Series 6 starts off with Amy, Rory, and River witnessing the Doctor's death in the future, and then coming back and meeting him and are coming back and meeting his past self, which is, how do I even explain this? The doctor, they think the doctor dies, but then they come back and he's still alive because it was a future. It was the doctor from like a couple years down the road that had died, and they finally meet when they come across the doctor again. He's a couple years younger. So they have some time before they think he dies, and they're not allowed to tell him because he can't know anything about his future. And during the season we realize there's something wrong with Amy, and that she's not actually there. She was a flesh copy set up by this mysterious woman who I still have absolutely no idea who she was or why she was doing what she was doing. But she kidnapped Amy. I keep wanting to call her Amelia because I have a friend named Amelia. They find out that Amy was pregnant the whole time, and they kidnap her, and they try to raise their daughter to be a killing machine that will eventually kill the doctor. And they go and they find out that they've been traveling with a fake Amy the whole time. They try to find the real Amy who is about to give birth to their daughter. They find out that River is really Amy's daughter, and she's also the doctor's wife, and weird things where the doctor now figures out that he's going to die, and then he decides to accept his fate. He makes all his goodbyes, and then he doesn't die because there were these people, these little tiny people who were like inside this giant robot version of other people, and they made a copy of the doctor, and that's what was killed earlier. And the doctor and River are now married, and Amy is the doctor's mother-in-law, and it was confusing. Yeah, and then Series 7, Amy and Rory are getting divorced for some reason, because we're supposed to care. I don't actually care. And they go to this planet, Asylum of the Daleks, and they come across who will be Doctor's newest companion, Clara. And from here, that's where my knowledge actually ends, because I only watched like half of the first episode of Series 7. But somehow but then I've also watched Day of the Doctor, which is where the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor meet the War Doctor, who was the one who was there fighting the war between the Time Lords and the Daleks. They meet him on the pivotal day when he was about to destroy the worlds. And that happened. That's pretty much all I got. I'm just gonna end the video there. My endings are not the greatest, I admit. What can you do?